What's up, Dragon Brood? So today we're going to be talking about Ikoria decks, actually for the next couple of videos. So there's going to be quite a few things coming up. Mostly doing this because I need to come up with a lot of deck lists because I will be participating in the Streamer Early Access event. Let me check the calendar. It's on Wednesday the 14th, no, the 15th. And thanks to Wizards of the Coast for that, by the way. But I'm going to need deck lists to play, so I'm going to go ahead and work on some things, and I figured I'd share them with all of y'all so y'all can kind of get a sneak peek on what I'll actually be playing. By the way, if you want to see me play those decks, you probably want to hop over to Twitch and friend me over there, or I guess follow me. It is twitch.tv/PowrDragn, so definitely can check that out. And today, the first thing we're going to start with is a Gruul list, because obviously this is a channel that likes to get on the Gruul train, so we'll start there. Let's get into it. Okay, I started here because this is a deck I'm already familiar with. I don't necessarily have to go out of my way to come up with something new, but I also have a majority of the cards already. And this is one of the things I recommend to people whenever you're moving into a new set or a new rotation or whatever. If you want to build a deck and kind of be budget conscious, see if you can start from one of the decks you already have, because you already own 3/4 of the parts. So it's easier on time just having to acquire the cards, and it's easier on your budget to not have to go buy them. Now, that said, like all my videos, I would recommend watching the beginning and the end, because we're going to give you the deck list, but I'll give you some tricks and tips as we get to the end of the video as well to make it easier to play. But anyway, just going down the list, we have Pelt Collector. We've reduced this number from 4 to 3, and partially because we needed just room for other things. We'll get to that here in a second. Zertai Goblins, we're still keeping a full set of 4, mostly because there are other things as far as the environment will play that are going to have a lot of smaller creatures being bigger. So being able to play something with Riot and just be able to get that extra +1/+1 is actually going to matter more often than I think it's going to. Robber of the Rich has also been reduced to 3, partly because it's obviously not as good when you're on the draw, but we just needed room to get some other cards into the list, and this was one of the ones that had to go. Paradise Druid. This is one that goes in and out of Gruul list. It's now back in, partially because we're trying to play a few more expensive cost cards in the 5 mana slots, which we'll get to in a second. So, again, something had to give, and this was just the space we're at. Domri's Ambush, we're now down to just 2, where previously we were playing 3. And part of the reason is that we catch ourselves siding these out fairly frequently. Any of the mid-range style decks, you don't really have good targets. I mean, occasionally you can hit like a Hydroid Krasis, or maybe use it to get some extra damage on a Nissa, but it's just not the card you're looking for most of the time. So it's okay, Figure can cut 1, and that's where it made some room for a few other cards. Gruul Spellbreaker, still playing 4 of these, being able to play it as a 4/4, great. And with some of the new cards, there's a few extra tricks we have in our pocket as well, which we'll get to those at the end of the video. Bonecrusher Giant, this is another one that there's times it's not as good against those slower decks, but it's still good enough, and it gets a boost from some of our other new cards as well, so he's kind of like re-earned his slot, so to speak. Questing Beast. The only thing about Questing Beast is just deciding if we want 4 or if we want 3. Starting with 4, but I wouldn't be surprised if this slot gets reduced to 3 and then the 4th one becomes something else. But for now, we're just going to take the easy road and start for 4 for simple planning purposes, because I don't have a better reason. First of the new cards that we're playing, though, is Gem Raiser. This card's very interesting because it's a 4/4 for 4, but it does also have both Reach and Trample, which could be important in the new environment. And the Mutate ability lets you destroy artifacts or enchantments, and there are quite a few enchantments that have shown their face already in the early stages of deck building of Ikoria, so we want to be able to kill those. The next of our new cards is Vivian, and Vivian Monsters Advocate is very cool. It's going to allow a lot of things to happen. It generates a 3/3. I have some very good strategic things to mention about this card here in a little bit. And then Godzilla, or Zalorith, or Zilarath, or however we're going to pronounce that. This is just another big body. It tramples. It gives you the deck a little extra weight toward the end of the game. And it's going to outsize most of the stuff your opponents are going to play. So all around quality card in this setup. Then of course we're still rocking Embercleave, just 3 of them. I've been at 3 for a while now. I know some decks still want to play 4, but just too often you either don't have a creature or have enough creatures to reduce the cost, or just don't have the mana, or, you know, there's a Teferi out and you can't really reduce the cost and play it as an instant. So there's a bunch of things going on with it that make it okay to still have 3. And then in some matchups I am siding it out, but overall, still a good card. The lands here have mostly stayed the same. I mean, it's Stomping Grounds, Temple of Abandon, bunch of forests, bunch of mountains. Like, nothing real surprising here. We're not playing any of the special lands. However, the new one that lets you draw a card if you control a creature power 4 or greater, that is one I've considered. Matter of fact, if I replace the last Questing Beast, it'll probably be with that land, actually. So something to think about if you're looking at making changes or you feel you're drawing Questing Beast too frequently. Now the sideboard, we're kind of just guessing. Like, when you go into a new environment, you never know what the set's going to look like, what the meta is going to change into. And you kind of have to just pick and choose based on what you know and how you're seeing the cards. So we're taking some chances here, but we're going to go with it. Still playing a couple of red cap melees. No idea, and we're not sure if the red decks are still going to be a thing or not. But if so, it's something. Playing 1 Weaponize the Monsters. And this is mostly like a concession to there being some type of control decks. It's possible we can even use it against the sacrifice decks as a way to pick off more of their creatures, like Priest of the Forgotten Gods. It can also protect you from having your cards stolen late in the game with a Claim the Firstborn. Another Domri's Ambush, just in case we need it. Scorching Dragonfire fills in a lot of slots against a lot of decks. Playing 4 here, that may be too much. I could cut 1 and turn it into something else. A couple of Enacts for the control matchups. Same thing with the Vivian. Shifting Ceratops, all around quality and good in this deck. And then another Gem Razor. Just in case we need to destroy more artifacts and enchantments, it gives us another option. So strategically, what are some of the new things we can do with this deck? There's quite a few, actually, and it changes drastically from the way we played the deck before. Obviously, we've slowed the deck down a little bit, but we didn't really hurt the power level. We kind of just went bigger. The first thing is you may possibly be in a situation where you don't often want to use Vivian's minus ability. I mean, just the fact that Vivian can stay on the table, producing a 3/3 every turn, and then also letting you play creatures off the top of your deck could be exactly what you want at the end of the game. However, Vivian has a very cool interaction with the way we have this deck built. For instance, if you're in a situation where you just need to get some damage through at the very end of the game, and you were to draw the Zillorath, then great, you play that as a 5, you go get a Questing Beast, hit your opponent for 4. But what if you drew the Questing Beast? Then now you can Questing Beast, go search up a Gruul Spellbreaker, get in for 7. Or you draw the Gruul Spellbreaker, go search for a Zerta Goblin, get in for 5. Right? So there's all these different combinations because of all the haste creatures that you can still end the game with just Vivian sitting on the table. That in and of itself is very cool. And that's assuming you don't even just have the 3/3 that was out there before. So that's kind of cool. The other thing to notice too is that Zillorath gives a little extra play to something like Paradise Druid and the Bonecrusher Giant because they have a higher power than toughness. So that can actually let them survive an extra point of damage, and that may make all the difference in the world. So that's just something to think about. The other thing to remember too on Mutate isn't just that we're going to get to destroy something with the Gem Razor. Like, that's obviously the main reason we want to play it. But you may just want to turn one of your 2/2s or 3/3s into a 4/4. And that alone can be huge. I mean, you can have turns where maybe you have 6 mana, you play a Gruul Spellbreaker with haste, and maybe you want to turn that, let's say, Robber of the Rich into a 4/4. Or maybe even just do it freely during the early stages of the game. Say like a turn 1, Pelt Collector, turn 2, 2/2 of your choice. Then turn 3, you just decide to turn your Pelt Collector into a Gem Razor, right? And then the other thing that's cool is if your Gem Razor is just a 4/4, well, I guess it'd be a 5/5 actually, because you have a counter already from the Pelt Collector. So that's pretty huge. So there's a lot of stuff going on here with this deck, and the new cards actually are going to really change the way the deck works. So just some ideas to think about on how the deck's going to play. It's definitely going to be a bit of a shift from the last version we played at the end of Theros season, but I think the deck actually still has potential. Now, that being said, the format could end up looking entirely different and we want to swap a bunch of the low-end cards, but who knows at this point? I think this is kind of just cracking the nut and seeing what's inside, but so far I think I like it. I want to say if you like this type of video and you like these type of deck techs, please hit the like button. And I'd also recommend subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification button because we're going to be putting out several deck lists here over the next couple of days. So if you want to make sure you get those, well, why not? Subscribe and help us out. But that's all we have for now. See you next time.